Hi, I'm Lee Worsley, the Executive Director of the Triangle J Council of Governments. Welcome to Outside the Sandbox, a discussion forum focused on highlighting the innovative work and people across our region. For today's episode, I'm really happy to be joined by TJCOG staff members, Jenisha Henneghan, Shuchi Gupta, Shantel Haskins, and Alex Halloway. February is Black History Month, and we will devote this episode to discuss the significant contributions of Black individuals to our region. Jenisha, Shuchi, Shantel, and Alex wanted to do some research on these contributions and present the information during the February Triangle J staff meeting. The information was really appreciated by our staff, so we thought it would be appropriate to more widely share the content with our local government members and others that may view this recording. Before we go on, I want you to meet these four great Triangle J employees. So Jenisha, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role here at TJCOG?
Good morning, Lee. My name is Jenisha Henneghan. I am the Assistant Director for our Area Agency on Aging. Currently, the projects that I look over are our consumer-directed programs and our veterans program. So it's good to be here this morning.
Thanks, Jenisha. Great to see you. Shuchi, how about you?
Sure, thanks, Lee, and good morning, everybody. My name is Shuchi Gupta. I work in the transportation focus area, and I'm the administrator for two grants, which are related to promoting alternate commute, essentially biking, walking, transit, carpool, and vanpool over driving single occupancy cars. I also work in the DEI space in our organization, and happy to be here this morning. Thank you.
Great, happy to have you. Shantel, can you tell us about yourself and your role with the COG?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shantel Haskins. I'm the Administrative Support Specialist, and I'm also Clerk to the Board. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Shantel. And Alex, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alex. I am an economic development planner on staff, and so within that, I help administer our region's foreign trade zone program, and I also help convene our solid waste consortium.
Great. Thank you, everybody. We're excited to hear more from you here in a second. So let's jump right in. Alex, when we think about influential people who shape the built environment of this region, so much attention is given to the people that influence the region from sort of a top-down approach, either through policy or something else of that nature. Perhaps not enough recognition is given to the people on the ground doing the actual work of creating these built environments. So can you talk a little bit about the prominent African Americans who have contributed to the built environment of the region?
Yeah, so one particular name that I came across is Arnold Lincoln Boykin. He was born in Sampson County, but grew up in Cameron and Moore, and then eventually moved to Sanford as a young adult. And he was one of the area's most prominent businessmen. Specifically, he worked in construction. He owned a contracting company, and so his firm was very prominent in terms of building many of the residential homes, a lot of the different civic and commercial buildings in the area. And so he was in Sanford at a time that was experiencing a lot of growth because of its industry and transportation. And so his work really left a big footprint on that region, as well as other places throughout the Triangle.
That's great. So what are some of the notable projects that Link Boykin was involved with?
Yeah, so he has some really long-standing buildings in the community still. So one is Fair Promise AME Zion Church. This was actually the church that he worshiped in, and it's one of the oldest congregations in Sanford and one of the oldest church buildings in downtown Sanford. So that his firm helped build that in 1926, and as I mentioned, it's still standing today. In other parts of the Triangle, he contributed to the Regal Theater in Durham. This was a prominent theater that was in the Hayti community throughout the 30s until the 70s until it was demolished. But It was a home for African American entertainment in terms of film and performances and things of that nature. And then he also helped with the construction of Lee County Training School, which is now known as W.B. Wicker School. This was the first the first school set up in the community to educate African Americans. And so that served an important prominence at that time. That was built as well in the early 1900s. And so those are some prominent areas and ways that he contributed to the region. I should mention that Lee County Training School was renamed to W.B. Wicker School, which was a prominent African-American educator within the region. And so it's been redeveloped a couple of times, but it's currently serving as a STEAM school within the community.
That's great. Interesting. So Mr. Boykin obviously left a big impact on Sanford and the area around Sanford and the region as a whole. So how has Sanford honored his legacy?
Yeah, absolutely. So they have a series of murals throughout the community, and one is known as the Visionary Builders Mural. And so it honors both Link Boykin and W.B. Wicker. It's a really nice sort of mural there. It shows a couple of the schools, so the W.B. Wicker School and then a residential house by Link Boykin, and then a profile of them both. So you can go to Sanford and see that and check out those profiles and read a little bit about them.
That's great. Yeah, we'd encourage folks to take a trip down to Sanford and check that out. And we'll also provide a link as part of this broadcast to a PowerPoint that you all did that'll provide more information on the individuals that you're profiling today. So thank you, Alex, for the great information. We really appreciate it. So we're going to move a little bit further, I guess, north and east toward Durham. And Jenisha, I'd love to talk to you about Durham. And when we think about economic development, talk to us about how significant the African-American influence was on economic development during the 20th century.
Sure. Durham is such a rich history there. So during the 20th century, there was an area which many know and history-wise known as Black Wall Street in Durham. And so it consisted of African-American businesses, and it was known for an area nationally for entrepreneurship, as well as a big area for the Black middle class. So this area in Durham, the Black Wall Street, it consisted of a 4-block area, and it was also complemented south with the Hayti community, which was the principal residential district for Black Durham residents. And it was a center for the city's educational, cultural, and religious life. The beautiful thing about this enterprise zone along Paris Street, it was the home of North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company, which was founded in 1898. And this company was the catalyst for economic and social development in Durham. Black Wall Street was also the home to the very first African-American bank and second oldest minority-owned bank in the United States, which is Mechanics and Farmers Bank, which you can still see within the area as well. They're prominent still in the area. One thing about the bank is that it extended loans to Black Durham residents, and it helped fund growth to local businesses where they might otherwise not have the capital to own their own businesses. So when you're looking in 1920, Black-owned businesses and properties totaled more than $4 million during that time. And this economic influence extended beyond Paris Street. I mentioned the Hayti district. It was founded in the 1800s as an independent Black community. So the residents of that community, they had their own local businesses, a theater, which I believe Alex mentioned earlier, that was designed by Mr. Boykin. There was a hotel, and also there's a church that was built from the congregation St. Joseph African American Episcopal Church. So within the community, Black business owners, they would hire locals for the local economy, and there were businesses that were prominent along Fayetteville, Pettigrew, and Pine Street.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Jenisha. And an interesting tidbit. One of the areas that we focus on at Triangle J is housing. And I know our housing program manager is having some good conversations with Mechanics and Farmers Bank right now about maybe being a partner on some of our housing work. So they are still very prominent and doing really good work in the community. So Jenisha, Durham's transformed significantly over the years. And are there any historical reminders within the city that sort of remind us of the significant impact and contribution of African Americans?
Sure. Some of the founders of the Mechanics and Farmers Bank and North Carolina Mutual, there was a brick mason, Fitzgerald. And so today there are pavers. He was a prominent bricklayer in Durham. And so on Kent and West Chapel Street, near the Fitzgerald building, there are still visible paver bricks that kind of show the history of his contribution. But also James E. Shepard, he was a pharmacist, but he was a founding member of the Hayti community. And most prominently, most people know North Carolina Central University, and he was the founder of that university. And so that university is still standing strong in Durham and is a big foundation of the Durham community. Also, if you go into the Hayti area, the original St. Joseph AME Church is still in their location, and it's the present day area of the Hayti Heritage Center. So you can learn a little bit more about the contributions and the rich history of the Hayti community with many of the activities that St. Joseph Church, the current Hayti Heritage Center, offers.
It's great. Thank you, Jenisha. Really appreciate all that great insight. You mentioned North Carolina Central University, which has a proud history in Durham, but Central is not the only historically Black college and university in our region and in the state. And so we're going to turn now to Shantel. And Shantel, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about our historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs. And I know that one in particular is very special to you. So what are some ways that HBCUs in our region can preserve their historical factors?
Yes, so North Carolina is home to 12 HBCUs. Barbara Scotia College in Concord, North Carolina, established in 1867. Bennett College out of Greensboro, North Carolina, established in 1873. Elizabeth City State University, established in 1891. Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina, established in 1867. Johnson C. Smith University, established in 1867 as well. Cantrell College, established in 1886 and later closed in 1975. Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina, 1879. North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, established in 1891, and North Carolina Central in Durham, North Carolina, established in 1910. St. Augustine University in Raleigh, established in 1867. Shaw University of Raleigh, established in 1865, and of course, my alma mater, Winston-Salem State University, established in 1892. A few universities in our region that can continue to preserve its legacy. St. Augustine University was home to St. Agnes Hospital. At the time, it was a teaching and practicing hospital, and later closed in 1961. So highlighting that it was the only hospital that served medical and provided assistance for African Americans from Washington, D.C. Down to New Orleans. And so highlighting those things and just expressing the importance and significance. Shaw University in our region being the first historically Black college in the South. So highlighting it being the first established and to succeed across barriers. Central, also just highlighting as Jenisha mentioned, the Black Wall Street. So continuing to highlighting those areas, celebrating them, and continuing to see how those different areas of significance will continue to be for now and years to come.
That's great. I'm glad you got to lift up your alma mater, Winston-Salem State, right?
That is right. Oh,
There you go. There you go. So, we've got a lot of great HBCUs in the region and across the state. So what are some ways that the HBCUs in our region can continue to expand enrollment?
Highlighting program areas and also affordability. Some colleges outside of our region for affordability. Fayetteville State University is ranked second nationally in affordability. And North Carolina also offers NC Promise to UNC Pembroke, Western Carolina, Elizabeth City State University, and just recently Fayetteville State University with tuition just $500. So you can't beat that affordability. And I think continue to highlighting different programs that are offered to students in ways that they can participate in, enroll, and later lead to graduation.
That's right. Affordability and a great education. That's a great combination. Well, thank you, Shantel. Appreciate the great insight on our HBCUs.
Thank you.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, Shuchi, we're going to turn to you now to talk a little bit about transportation. Transportation, you mentioned in your introduction, is an area that you work in here at the COG. And I know you're excited to share some significant contributions made by a Black entrepreneur around transportation. So can you tell us more?
Oh, thank you, Lee. And this is a very interesting story that I myself did not know about, until I researched. And it's a story not just about one entrepreneur, but a group of Black entrepreneurs right here in Winston-Salem. So back in 1920s, Winston-Salem's city trolley service, it didn't operate in the Black neighborhoods. So the Black people, they were at a disadvantage. They either had to walk or to work, or just have access to those jobs, which to work in the walking distance. And they would also take what was called jitneys, Jitney. It was something between a taxi service and a bus line. Jitneys were operated by Black folks, but they had no capital investment or no support from the city. So these jitneys were not exactly as safe as they should have been. They were very competitive. And in 1926, exactly on April 24th, one of the jitney operators, Mr. Woodland, he called a meeting of the 35 jitney operators in the area. 21 jitney operators showed up, and they decided that one day to form their own transportation company. And they named that transportation company as Safe Bus. And this would operate only in the African-American neighborhoods and provide them transportation. And transportation is a very, very crucial factor for people to access good jobs. It's as relevant today as it was in the past, and being in the transportation, I fully, understand that part. And so they started this company called Safe Bus. They called it Safe Bus because they had made a promise to the Winston-Salem's mayor at that time that they would have a safe and organized bus system. So the jitneys, they transitioned to a fleet of 35 city buses. And it was this corporation, it was owned and run completely by the Black folks. It was profitable from the day one, it was like an overnight success. It helped people get access to far-off jobs they could not access in the past, better paying jobs. They did not have to walk, so they could use that time for other purposes. So it was just phenomenal in terms of improving the quality of life for the people. And the bus gave its passengers freedom to sit wherever they chose. So there was a lot of pride, in the people for this enterprise. And the company employed more than 80 drivers. It would transport about 8,000 passengers per day, which is phenomenal. So there are many firsts with this company. It had one of the first Black female presidents for any American large company, Mary Miller Burns, which was back in 1959, So just amazing. And they say that she could basically drive any bus that was in the parking lot. So she was a very capable woman there. And then the pioneers of the Safe Bus company, they created routes without that engineering background, or having any formal training in the logistics, that resulted in this bus company being profitable, and they say that they build a foundation and blueprint for the city to follow even now, so that speaks volumes about the capability of these group of entrepreneurs. This company, it continued to make profit, operate safe and well, while on the other side, the city-owned contracted bus service, it kept on losing money, unfortunately, run by white folks. And in 1968, that contractor left. It was highly in debt. And the city tapped Safe Bus Company to provide transportation to the entire Winston-Salem, which it agreed. And then it became the largest African-American owned and operated profitable transportation business in the world, So not a small feat at all back in that time. And in 1972, Winston-Salem Transit Authority then purchased the Safe Bus Company's assets, and it became part of the city-run department, So just an amazing story of how, a successful business was run by the Black folks in Winston-Salem.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. So the contributions, though, weren't just of the work, weren't just seen in Winston-Salem. I think you wanted to talk a little bit about a contribution or invention that was made that we all know at sort of a national level.
Sure, definitely. Yeah. And this innovation was made by a gentleman called Garrett Morgan. He was inducted in the Inventors Hall of Fame in 2005. So Garrett, he only had elementary school education, but he was just very safety-minded, a business leader whose mind was always in the problem-solving mode. And back in 1900s, our streets, they had automobiles, they had carriages, and obviously bikers, and a lot of pedestrians, horses, you name it, and it was there. And the streets were a total chaos. They were dangerous. Accidents happen, bad ones. They happen even now. And one day, Morgan, he witnessed a terrible accident at one of the Cleveland intersections, and his brain, it just naturally went into the problem-solving mode. And he invented what we know as the yellow light, at the stoplight. So, we all know that traffic lights are the most important thing to keep us safe, the traffic organized when we are on the streets for any, vehicle driver or pedestrian or somebody in the carpool or vanpool. So what happened was, back in those days, the traffic signals only had two lights, or what we may say, two signals, go and stop. And people didn't know when the go signal would become stop. So the signal is go, people are crossing, and it suddenly goes stop. So people who are in the intersection, they had to stop abruptly, and the traffic would start moving. So there was a lot of chaos, a lot of accidents, and it was one of those accidents that Morgan witnessed. And what he did was he invented a T-shaped traffic signal with a third caution signal. So when this signal was on, the traffic in all directions stopped, the intersections would clear, pedestrians would cross, and the streets became safer. So Morgan, he got a patent for this invention in 1923. And later on, he sold this invention to General Electric. And he has invented many more things. And he was a very renowned figure in Cleveland for doing many more, contributions to his community.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Really interesting. So as you were doing your research, I know you found out something really interesting that I think the people watching this might enjoy. So can you share what you found out?
Sure, and I was really excited, when I came across this. This is about our very own Maya Angelou, one of the most renowned and influential voices in our time. Yeah. So I work in transportation, and obviously, so many of you have read her book, which is an autobiography, which came out in 1970, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I had the privilege of reading this book a few years ago, and then I did not realize, that particular incident. But when I started working in transportation and I was doing the research, I could connect. So she, back in 1944, when the World War was going on and the whole world basically was waiting for that, Maya was just a teenager, 15-year-old. And as you can imagine, she was ahead in her classes, and she took a year off just to work, get some experience. And she wanted to work on the electric streetcars. She used to live in San Francisco with her mom. One can imagine a 15-year-old dressed in a blue suit, with a money changer belt on the hip and just going up and down and leading people on the streetcars. That got her fancy. And with her persistence and courage, she was able to get a job on the streetcars, and she was the first Black female streetcar conductor in the United States. So, that just brought a smile to my face and something really very nice to relate to. Just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's a great story. What a great story. So I just wanted to say thank you to each of you for doing this research, for sharing it with our staff, and then being willing to come on our podcast and share it again. I think it really does highlight the significant contributions of Black individuals to communities, to our region and nationally. But I think importantly, it just sort of scratches the surface. It's a few examples, and I would encourage folks to continue to research and learn about the contributions of Black individuals to the Triangle J region. And we certainly wanted to put this video out during Black History Month as a way of the COG showing some of the significant contributions to our region and to some of the things that our local governments are involved with: transportation, economic development, housing, and other things. So Shantel and Alex and Jenisha and Shuchi, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. All right,
Thank
we're gonna,
Thank
yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you for having
We're
me.
gonna call it a day, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on our podcast. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.